last week.
Yeah, last week, what we were speaking about was to reduce really the central ideas. First, we did the Siddharm, each Seder, and then we took a look at from all the going backwards. We did each Masechta. Then we did each Seder. We did it reverse. We did it and so on. But ultimately, we see, the central ideas or the major themes of each Masechet. Then we went to eat the whole Seder, and then some of the reduction of of all the Siddharm together. Okay, to really get a handle on what are the Taryag mitzvahs really all about. So I just want to introduce, just ultimately speaking, just to reduce it a little further, which is interesting because then you really begin to see, what the central idea is. Want to do me a favor, close the window? It's cold. Good. So what we went on last week is that the subject,
Objects.
Yeah, that's the actual. That the ideas that are dealt with is a subject, right? The concept of ownership, object ownership, the concept of ownership denial, which is damage or negation, right? Then we had the concept of usage, we had the concept of activity, then we had the concept of two subjects, right? But if you really think about it, what the Torah seems to concern itself is really only a couple of ideas. It's really only two ideas, if you really think about it. There is man and his world. That's really what the Torah deals with. Man and his world. Man is the development of shleimus in a person. That's Masechet Avos. That's Pirkei Avos, really. Pirkei Avos deals with correct, ethical, moral behavior, or required or advised behavior, whatever. But all of the behavior is supposed to basically mashlim and odam. It's the development of a man, of a Jew, right? That's the concept of Avos. The rest of the Masechtas deal with either object or entities. What does that mean? There are three things in an object, because that's, remember, man and his world. So there's man, the development of man. His world, right, is basically three things. Objects, and there are three things that go on an object. One, can you own the object, the ownership itself? The interaction between the subject and the object, which is called an activity. And then the usage is three. Those are the three things that a person deals with in terms of an object.
Enjoyment falls into usage, probably.
Yeah, of course. You get enjoyment because you're using it. So clearly, So under subject, object, you have ownership of object or non-ownership. And then under that, you have all kinds of things. Then you have the interaction between the subject and his object, and that's called an activity, which happens to be time regulated, but that's really what it is. All the malachas of Shabbos is where a person interacts with an object. We're not talking about usage. We're not talking about ownership, right? That's what an activity does. It's an interaction between a person and his object, or an object. So you have object ownership, object interaction, and object usage. Those three things cover four Siddharm. Because on the object ownership, you have interference with that ownership. That's nezek.
That's Noshim and Ezekim.
Yes, so we've done Zroim, Moed, Noshim, and Ezekim. Man and his objects, ownership, interaction, usage. That's it. Those are the three ideas under object itself.
But usage is also interaction, isn't it?
Yes, but it's a specific type of interaction.
Yeah.
Interaction by deriving benefits, probably.
Yes, deriving benefit. Whereas the actions of Shabbos is not, it's cooking. You look at its own interaction to achieve something, but it's not usage. Planting, you take an object and you plant, right? All the Zoreya, Choresh, Koitze, you cut. Makra Patish, building. There's no usage there. It's really construction in a certain sense. These are all actions that are used in some form of construction.
Yeah.
You see? So it's really the subject's interaction with an object. But it's not usage. Then there's the usage of the object. Therefore, remarkably, subject-object is one major theme. And under object, there are only three things. Ownership, or the interference of it. Right? Action, interaction with the object, and usage. There you are.
What was the second one?
There's subject and object,
Yeah.
and there are three things under.
Usage.
No, go in order. Ownership is one. That's the first. Always go logically in steps. Ownership is one, or the interference of that ownership. Right? So that's Noshim and Ezekim. And then there's the interface, or the interaction between the subject and the object. That's Moed, activity. And then there's Roim, which is the usage. There you are. Now, what about Kachim and Taras? There we don't deal with objects. What do we deal with in these two Siddurim? What are you pointing upwards? You talking about the ceiling or something like that?
Spiritual entities.
Oh, very good. You're dealing with entities that exist in another dimension. Interesting. One dimension, one entity is what?
Hashem.
Is the Rebbeinu Shalom. So he doesn't exist in any dimension. But we can say he exists in another dimension.
Compared to me.
Right? So the Kachim and Taras really are the laws that concern, right, man's interaction or his relationship with two spiritual entities, one being God, the other being Tumah. So, you see, and that's really the whole thing. So if you really want to boil down the whole thing, it's man and his world, objects, entities. That's it. So it all boils down to man and his world, namely, objects and entities, namely, under object you'd have three, entities you'd have two. That's Kol Torah Kula. And man's development. There you are. Did I leave anything out? You know what is to reduce the entire Torah to those ideas? That's really what it is. You really think about that. It's interesting.
So entities is under world?
Man and his world, yeah.
Man is in his world?
Yeah, well, Thomas certainly is.
Meaning his world means what's outside of him.
Outside of him, yeah. Man and his environment, his world.
Okay.
Kiddush is also in this world.
Yeah.
The Beis Hamikdash. And so is Tumah. Even though they really are in a different dimension. But they both interact here.
So objects and spiritual entities.
That's it.
So Kachim and Taharos, that interaction with the Kachim and Taharos, that's interaction with other dimensional entities.
Yeah, other dimensional entities. That's it. That's the whole Torah. And then you have to add man's development, because that's man.
Right.
So under man is development, which is really Avos, and under his world is objects.
So Avos
and
stands
entities.
apart in a sense from.
Well, but remember,
Singled out from the whole Shas because it's.
Yeah, in that sense, yes, yeah, because it deals basically with the subject, not with objects, really. It's his development that is of major concern to Avos, and that is the correct behavior.
You see, Avos deals with perfection of man.
Who of us?
with
Yeah.
perfection of man.
Correct.
Other things deal with obligations of man, or they don't deal with perfection really. They deal with
Well,
so
a
that's
person
in a sense that's
achieves
different.
perfection by doing those things, by living according to the mitzvahs or the laws. He does achieve perfection, but it's not a behavior. It doesn't concern objects or entities in a certain sense. It concerns his behavior.
So that's man dealing with himself in a sense. Others.
Yeah.
He deals with himself.
That's right.
A reflexive.
Yeah. So so there you are. You can go from the top down. You can go from the top is what? The man and his world. Then on the man is his behaviors for development, and under his world there are objects and entities. And then you go further down, right? You can actually create a whole structure, right? And then further down you have under entities is tumah, kedusha, and tumah. And under objects you have ownership or the lack thereof. Activities and or interactions and usage.
So we have
and then you go further down. Then you begin to identify the Siddharim. So how many levels we got? Man in his world is one level. Next level is the man, and then his world is objects and entities.
Second level.
Then the next third level is
Man in the other world.
What's the objects?
what are the three different distinctions of object, and so on.
And entities.
It's three. Yeah,
And then you get to the
two
Siddharim.
different. Then 4 is the Siddharim, and 5 is the Masechtas. There you go. Now that would be interesting.
Wow.
Then we go into each parak.
So the only thing
How
that goes
each
on is
parak
Well, then each one.
applies to the
That's next
Masechta.
step. Next step.
What was that?
How each parak in the Masechta applies to the Masechta. How each
Of
parak-
that theme.
The central
Okay.
point of each parak.
Exactly. Of course, you see the whole Shas right in front of you. In fact, you see the whole Torah in front of you because the Mishnah is really the details of the Torah.
But is it possible to do it without actually learning all Mishnahs in details?
Is it possible?
Prokim, one parak at a time.
on 1 foot.
No, if you could do it, if you could make siyum on Prokim, or the whole Shas, that would be great. But I'm not sure, I don't think it's
How can
possible
you make
to
a
do
scene, man? It's in the whole enormous amount of details.
No, one parak at a time.
You see, what's
Just like we did with Sidorim, it's a lot of details, but we just...
But you're better off doing.
It's central idea.
Yeah, but you're better now that you have these 5. You're right. We just talked. We have 5 different levels of this structure that encompass Kol Torah Kula. The next thing you do is not Mishnahs. It is
Prokim, that's what...
no. Remember, you're going from top down.
Yes,
You want
once
to
we
go
have
the logical
Masechta,
sequence.
now we have Masechta, so now we have to go down. Down is only Prokim, and what else is there between Prokim and Masechta?
I'm not dealing with Mishnahs. What
Oh.
goes after the? Well, we've identified all the themes or central ideas in every Masechet. Fine.
Right.
But what I'd love to do now, I'd love to look at the Taryag and take all the Taryag mitzvahs based in that Masechta. Or you can do it vice versa.
I'm missing to take Taryag in terms of...
You see, the Taryag is the basis of everything.
Right.
And what I just gave you, this 5-part structure, is the whole Taryag. So what you can do is put the Taryag further in, not underneath. So you could have man and his world, right?
Or to classify all the mitzvahs in a sense.
Yeah, you cluster all the mitzvahs based on this division. Then we'll worry about the Masechtas.
Oh, because Masechtas ultimately they're about mitzvahs.
The
So
basis of all
if you skip the mitzvahs, we will
Masechtas-
have trouble to identify what the
Yeah,
what parak is
so
about.
really what we should do is do the
To go to
mitzvahs.
Taryag.
Yeah, cluster all the mitzvahs around these ideas.
Can we actually do it? I think it's mamash a must.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, the advantage of that is you see
Yes,
Kol
no,
Torah-
no.
I interrupted you.
Oh yeah, 2 things. I guess 2 things, 2 separate things. Well, one, I think maybe these guys might agree with me, but maybe we should take all the mitzvahs, and we'll take the Sefer HaMitzvos.
Yeah, the Rambam. That's
Yeah,
it.
take the Rambam, the 613 mitzvos,
That's-
and let's go through each mitzvah. and
That's a
see
must. I mean,
where-
we have no choice. This is what we have to do.
Why can't we do this?
Well,
in this session?
I'm not. All I'm saying is that what I've just
instead of
done.
going through Kedoshim, let's do that. Let's go through the mitzvahs. I think these guys would probably agree with me. I think that's where we're at right now.
200%.
Let's take the 613 mitzvahs and plug them into our structure.
Well, in cluster them, yeah.
Yeah, cluster
Because the
them into our
Mishnah
structure. Yeah, but let's do
is
it.
nothing more than the outgrowth of the mitzvahs.
Can we do it?
Can we do it?
Yeah, that's what
Should we
I'm
do
saying.
it?
No, for sure should do it, but can we? Can we?
You mean instead of learning kachim, do
Right,
this?
exactly.
We are very anxious.
You use the word we. First, you got to check out if everybody else wants it. Much
But that was
I'm
my
good with it.
suggestion. So
Well,
now we get
I'm
to
good with it.
other-
I just need to understand a little better before I jump into it how the Rambam classifies mitzvahs. Rambam has.
Oh, wait, before you can ask my second question, sorry.
Go ahead.
Since he gave me the floor for a second. Two, under the idea of subject, the only thing that goes under there that we have right now is self-development.
Yeah.
Anything else that would go under subject?
Right now, it means all the mitzvahs that deal with the development of a man, the subject, the Jew.
Right. No, behavior, basically.
Ethics.
Yeah,
Ethics,
yeah.
behavior,
Although
right.
theoretically, the mitzvahs, any of the mitzvahs, if he marries the woman the right way, that will add to a shleimus.
No, but that's external. I mean, here it's reflexive. It's himself.
Yeah, so we would have to divide that, exactly.
But there's no other, what do you call it, category that we put underneath subject besides this idea of self-development?
This is all I see now.
Okay.
I don't see anything else.
Okay.
There may be,
But self-development is what?
Look, everything is always tentative. It's just
Yeah.
based on the information we have
I think
now.
it's like dealing with self in a sense. It's like subject is
Yeah.
dealing with self.
Yeah. It's not precise because, there's a lot of stuff that goes on the development, but it is something, It's something to begin a basis of working at. You know what I'm saying?
So where that Hashkafa Avoda falls?
Well, void is development.
So Avoda falls here.
Yeah.
Hashkafa Kabbalah, where would that fall?
Well, that's limud, right? That's Talmud Torah, that's
Which is
learning,
part of self-development?
which is part of self-development. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because remember, development itself, you can now classify one, cognitive development, what he knows, emotional
That's
development.
Kabbalah probably. That's Musar.
No, it's Torah. I mean, it's Torah. This is what I know. I develop my ideas. I develop my emotions, Yerushalayim,
And actions.
right? And then I develop my actions. That's really three different areas. That's going into the development itself. Man's different areas of development: his thinking, his feeling, and his doing. You know what I'm saying? And maybe also his interactions. Maybe. You see? So that we're now divided. So there are mitzvahs that are now going to be, like for instance, Yira. Yira, to fear the Rebbeinu Shalom. Where does that fit? It's a mitzvah,
Feeling.
obviously. On the feeling. Yeah. Lodas, to know. She'esham Elokai. It's the
Cognitive.
Rambam's first mitzvah.
That's cognition.
It's cognition, see? So as you go on, you're gonna develop subcategories or divisions, obviously, because these are hugely broad, But then as you go through the Taryag, then you begin to formulate a whole categories, subcategories, and so on, and ultimately you'll have a huge tree,
That resembles.
or I should say a pyramid, because really it's a top down.
That remembers that matters about Rabbi Akiva, how he sorted the kernels and.
Yeah.
So after you finish that, where will you put the Mishnayos?
Well, the Mishnayos is really the details of the mitzvahs. That's really what it is. Remember, I once said, the Taryag is the basis of
Taryag is in
all-
between the Mishnayos and the Masechta. I mean, that's
The
in
who?
between. The Taryag mitzvahs are in between Masechta and the Mishnayos.
No, really they should be first. Really they should be first. In other words, if you had to put it where, so the first thing is man and his world. It's an interesting exercise. Man and his world. It's called the ultimate reduction. Man and his world. Under man you have development. Under his world you have what? Objects and entities. Then you detail that where you have under development, we could put cognition, what do you call it, feeling, affect. It's cognition, affect, and actions. right? And under the other one, you'd have
And the world.
on the underworld, you'd have division of object, which is those three. Ownership, division of. I mean, if I had a blackboard, the mom would do it. You know, because I'm doing it. There's no visual. What happened to that?
Yeah, I have it.
You have it? Yeah. Oh, so we can do that.
Actually, I had it here.
Did he take it back?
Somebody else took it back. I'm going to find out.
Somebody else took it back. Whose was it?
I don't know. It was.
You see, so actually, you have a pyramid here, where ultimately on the bottom you have every masechet, and if you each pair because they're loose, but certainly every masechet you have what do you call it after the taryag, and the taryag itself is clustered around the objects and entities and so on. You see the whole thing right in front of you, and this is what the Rebbeinu Shalom wants. So what you really see is each mitzvah where they aim. Every mitzvah aims in one of these things. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a tremendous view of the entire Torah. By looking at this, you see, every mitzvah aims somewhere in one of these structures. Then once you've done the taryag, then you do the masechet, the mishnayos, because they deal with the taryag in detail. And so
then we could classify the program. We find central point of the program.
well, then you could talk about each masechet. What are the details, or the different chapters, or the different sections of each masechet?
Mm-hmm.
You see, and then you can theoretically you can have the entire Shas outline of mishnayos. I'm not leaving on Gemara because Gemara's problems. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Wow,
Get it back.
it's an interesting exercise. Imagine on one board to be able to look at the entire Torah, all the way down to the sections. Sections. Wow, that's interesting, huh?
The very interesting to see is the mitzvah tree as it relates to the structure.
Well, it's really the Torah tree.
Probably the same idea.
Yeah, ultimately it's the mitzvah tree. And that subdivides where each of the mitzvahs are located. It's interesting
But
that
that's
people
what
do
we
not
want.
learn the Taryag.
But that's what we want to do now.
They learn it through Gemara. It's like the old joke, How did I know you're not allowed to steal? Because it's exercise. It talks about stealing. So that's how I know you can't steal. It's very odd, isn't it? People do not appreciate the amount of yediyos contained in the Taryag. I once said it would be interesting to do what? On top of a table, all the Taryag mitzvahs, and on the side, 10 categories that would be standard for all Taryag. For instance, who is obligated, who is exempt, what is the mitzvah, where is it done, when is it done, how is it done, you see, what are some of the conditions, and so on, see, to create categories on the side and then to fill it in of each mitzvah. So you would actually have 6,130 ideas. It's a lot of information. Just in the Taryag. But the Taryag would be clustered based on these central ideas, these central themes. So you mamish could look at the entire oral law based on that. Then the Mishnayos will come in and give you the details. Okay. But before you get the details, this is the greatest way to see the klal of what the Torah is really all about. You see. And we've narrowed it down. The Torah is interested in what? In your relationship with entities, or your development of self, entities and objects. That's it. You know.
Yeah. But the way you right now narrow it down was through the Starim.
Well, we started with
categories,
that, but
started
really,
with
I
that.
went from the Sodom. We went up,
Went up, then went
Yeah.
up and back down.
and then we
the
went
Starim.
back down. Yeah, that's right.
So why is that? Meaning, are there other ways of classifying the mitzvahs? Meaning, how did the Rambam do it?
The Rambam did it through Iyun, subject matter. All the mitzvahs about Pesach, all the mitzvahs about Neder, Nidorim, Nozir, Momen, Niskei Momen, Ritzicha, right? Kiddush HaChodesh,
So he did it.
Shabbos. In other words, what he did is he really took all the Masechtas basically, and he took out all the mitzvahs which are connected to each Masechta. So that's how he organized
So
it.
he first went through Masechtas and then put the mitzvahs.
Probably,
Within
yeah.
the
Well, yeah,
Masechtas.
because if you learn Mishnayos, what he did is he generalized, or he connected all the mitzvahs of that particular Masechta, which becomes a chapter, a subject matter.
So why does he have his main categories? Why aren't they the Starim? Meaning his main categories are.
He didn't
half-
do-
No, because he didn't organize it. No, because he's not
He
organizing.
did a categorical organization, not a.
He did a top.
organization.
He created a sequence of topics or subjects,
Okay.
and based on his sequence,
Okay.
he did that. So it's sort of a logical sequence. You know, first there's there's belief. So you have the
right.
yeah, Mada. Well, you have the halachas of Avodah Zarah. You have a lot of stuff in man and God, so to speak.
Mhm.
And then there's Avos development, character development. Which is after God. That so there's man and God. Then there's man and his character. Then after that goes manim. Then he did with actions or activities as regulated by time period. You know what I'm saying? And so on. And then he did, whatever, about ownership. Exactly. That's his sequence, You could follow his sequence, or the main idea from the Rambam is this cluster, his groupings, But we can create our own sequence, based on what we feel should be our own sequence,
But we're going to end up at the same point, no?
Well, you'll end up with all his mitzvahs, yeah, because that's the
No, what I'm saying is that the clustering.
You'll cluster it different from the one.
Are we going to cluster different?
It'll be different. It'll be different because he will put, for instance, the laws of Nadarim,
Right.
really the laws of Nadarim they're really in Noshim because one of the rights of a man to his wife
Right.
is made for Hanidarim.
Right.
But he just has the whole Nadarim. Is it in ownership? No, it's just Hilchas Nadarim, Hilchas Naziris.
So where are we going to put Nadarim?
We
Yes.
under ownership, or that's a good question. Part of it goes under ownership because you can be made for a neder. Where's the rest go? Good question. What do you put in the Nadarim?
Object usability.
Maybe
Yeah.
usage.
Usage.
Where a guy swears that he will not use something. So in a certain essence, there are two types of object usage, right? Look at it this way. Where in object usage would you put it?
Self-imposed.
Self-employed.
Again, which Masechta would you put in the Dharm based on that thinking? This is extremely creative thinking.
Something like a Kalayim type of thing.
Where?
Like
It's
Kalayim
right.
Exactly.
Something
No,
or Orla.
he's right. Kalayim.
Kalayim or Orla.
Because
like
a
that.
neder creates an issur about usage. And that's the same thing as Kalayim and Orla. Right? So there you are. So we could put Nadarim as a vehicle or a device where you can create an object issur of usage. Now, he doesn't do that. But thinking about it, if we know what a neder is, then we would categorize it under Zroim, right? But under what other ways can an object be forbidden to use? You see?
Like positive zroim and negative zroim.
Yeah, Well, you have
the
to,
negative drawing.
therefore you need details. But
Right.
just looking at it, it would be on the Kalayim. You're right. Very good. You see? Now, nobody in his right mind
Well,
would
the
ever
truth
think
is
of doing it on the...
truth is
Think
even-
about that.
even under
You
the
guys can
Torah-
remember, in Shas, forget, okay, the part that deals with property rights, fine, I got it. That should be on the ownership, women, and so on. But the part that deals with creating a neder, where'd you put it in Shas? Really?
But the truth is, if you look at the mitzvahs of under Nedorim, it may actually split into two.
Well, that's what...
Because some of them actually really belong under the ownership aspect of it, and others belong under object usage.
No, that's what I'm
aspect of
saying. That's
it.
exactly what I said.
So even within the same category, they may split.
Oh, yeah, of course, that's what I'm saying.
Maybe like 70-30 or whatever it is.
That's what I
but-
just said. Yeah, you'd split it.
Okay.
But even the ownership aspect is not really, meaning there's still the aspect of the wife making a neder, and we're saying you as an owner is able to be
You have
made
the-
for it.
Yeah.
You have the right to be made for it.
But that's what I want to know. When, how, where can I be made for it?
Yeah, but the main
Under what
idea,
conditions?
The main idea of nedarim is that self-imposed isur.
That's another aspect.
Yes.
Now that is the aspect. Whether it's the man, whether it's the woman, then there is something on top of that, which is if I'm the owner, I could remove that power that the woman should have had.
Good.
But the main idea is the power.
What
that
you're
you
saying
have.
is correct. The central idea of a neder is really on the usage.
Right.
It's a device to create an isur on the usage of an object, right? Now, however,
overruling of that.
well, there's a
Certain
cancellation or nullification,
Right.
where you can nullify a neder.
But again, it's under
But
usage.
that's also
It's under
a
usage.
property that he has. But the device, the device in and of itself belongs in Kilayim or Chala or Ola, right? But the usage of that device or the nullification of that device as a property right would be. See, so you're right. You can take one Masechta and split it 4 ways. It would look very different based on this kind of thinking, based on the intrinsic nature of each mitzvah device.
Interesting, Chazal didn't do it this way. I mean, they wanted us to figure it out.
What Chazal did is they lumped.
Right.
They lumped things together, even though conceptually they may be distinct. Whatever reason, whatever reason why they did that,
Yeah.
Now, some Masechtas, I've just organized the entire Torah,
Again,
and I reduced it to 2 ideas. I went further reductions.
Here's an interesting question. Philosophically, with regard to Chazal.
Right?
Here's an interesting question.
So you want to write it down now? What are you going to do? Okay, what's on top?
I'm not ready.
Oh, you're not ready? Okay.
It's an
I just see it.
interesting question with regard to
Actually,
Chazal.
if you want to make a chart, be Gavaldi. Because it's possible, as you'll see, it's possible to chart or diagram out the entire Torah from the beginning to the end. To see what are all the different topics that the Torah wants or concerns itself with.
just last time we did it within like 2 shurim, now we did it within 10 minutes.
Because I included the Taryag mitzvahs in this whole sequence, as we'll write it out, But it would be astounding to look at that.
So anyway, we had a vote, sort of, to now do the Tarek mitzvahs and fit it back into our structure. If you're agreeable to do that for the
Shimon
structure.
is not here.
Whatever spins the dreidel.
Whatever what?
Whatever spins the dreidel.
That's yeah.
There's an interesting question on Hazal. That if
See,
it's-
really, wait. See, really, this should be taught first.
This is taught.
It is taught?
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
This should be, in other words, when a guy is, let's say, 9 or 10 years old, it's okay. Let's look at the totality of Torah. Don't look at breakdowns and fragments and little
Is there some
chapters.
sort of chazal that
Let's look at it all. And that's how you begin to learn. And then once you begin to learn the Gemaras, then you know exactly where you are in that map. Except now, you know what it's like? It's like there's a map of the United States. That's the first thing you look at, And then we look at the map of the states. And then if you really want to get into it, we'll look at the map of the cities and the counties and the neighborhoods and the blocks and your house, right? So why does everybody begin at your house or the city when really you should look at the entire country, which is called the USA, you see? Could you imagine a guy's view if he did that? He would know exactly where he is, and the whole thing would organize itself under that.
Well, Limud Torah is usually done on the level of prat.
Are you ready to do this?
I'm ready.
You need to take a picture of this. Who got the...
My microphone is broken.
You can take a picture of it? Okay. So at least we can,
Okay, so first
Okay, the
Hang
top...
on,
The top...
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Question of Hazal is this. The idea of Judaism and of the Rebbeinu Shalom is that he gives a Torah because he wants the Jews to be able to follow it and to perform the mitzvahs.
Yes.
So, why is it that Hazal, instead of organize it in such a manner so that it would be easy to remember and for every year to understand exactly where they are in the structure, because they probably had some idea of this back then. They probably had some intuitive idea of what the structure really looked like. Why did they decide to conceal it?
That goes into the whole shiur of difference between Luchas Shnius and Luchas Rishonos. It's the whole...
I know other ideas of the Hashkafa, that has to do with the level of the Yidden, and I don't want to get into that aspect. I'm saying...
You're asking me to explain the
themselves-
logic of their mindset.
Exactly.
I don't know. That's a very difficult thing to answer,
it's one thing to say
especially
the Rebbeinu Shalom
when
gave it to
it
a
seems
person.
like there's a different way of doing it, which perhaps is, I hate to say it, but, certainly to our minds, we tend to think of a different setup or arrangement. Chazal had their own understanding of how they want to arrange the oral law.
Sure.
That's what it is. I don't know what it is.
Is it possible?
People are always trying to figure it out, but...
Is it possible that there was a Horashah that Rebbe had to write down the Mishnah?
Yeah, that anyway, yeah.
That was a Horashah, though.
Yeah.
There was never any publication
Yeah.
of Torah Shabbat.
I know what you're going to say, right?
To that end,
Maybe he just continued he minimized the Hirosh
right.
by making it more confusing. So even if he has to write it down, it's still difficult to figure out, right?
It's not confusing, it's just...
He's telling the Rebbe.
Yeah, that's a principle, maybe. I've thought of that.
But the real answer is that the Yigia has to be built in. That's the real answer. The deep answer. The Yigia has to be built in. So Chazal B'davka didn't do it.
How do you get around the Indian that you want the Jews to be able to observe the mitzvahs and to know as much Torah as they can? So why not make it in a structure so that
You are. I cannot.
The question
Because they're not Mekayim, they're
So go back to that.
if they're not Mekayim, then they're in a sense of a chet. Because they're not being, they're outside of what the Torah wants them to do.
I want to show you something. Where's a chumash? A shemais.
Yeah, the Rashi
Okay.
there of the, I know what you're going to say.
This is where it all starts.
Okay, I know what you're going to say, but you understand the question.
You may know, but we got
Yeah, I know what you're talking. It's the first Rashi of
Mishpatim.
how Moshe Rabbeinu transmitted the
Not how Moshe Rabbeinu, how the Moshe taught him. It's a very important Rashi because it's astounding. It says, "Ve'ela mishpatim asher tosim lefneihem," and these are the laws that you shall place before them. Now, what it should say, and these are the laws that you should teach them.
Right.
Right? What do you mean, place before them? What is this? Some type of a object that you put in a certain position?
Or the Shulchan Aruch Rashi.
Oh, so what does Rashi say? And he goes on, Tosim Lefneim, you don't place laws in front of them, you teach them laws. So Rashi says, because this is the way, Omalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe, God said to Moshe, Lo yitara al daitcha, don't think, loima, that you can say. What would you want to say? Eshnu lahem ha-perek v'halacha, I'm going to teach them the perek and the halacha, beis or gimel pamim, 2 or 3 times. Ad shetehi sidu b'piyem k'mishnasa, until they can repeat it back to me, and so on. Ve'eni matriach, this is part of what you're going to think. I'm not going to bother myself. Matuich atzmi lohavinam tameh hadova uperushoy. I'm not going to bother telling them the principle. Tameh hadova is the principle uperushoy, right? And all the necessary information that must accompany the halachas. Don't think you can do this, right? That's the Moshe was telling them, don't do this. Lokach nema asher tosim lifneim. Therefore, it says that you will place before them. What does that mean? This is not what to do. Of course, you have to teach them, but I want to tell you what you have to teach. Kishulchan ha'oroch, like a prepared table. Umuchon lechol lifnei odom. There are two things here. One, that each of the dishes has to be prepared. Yes? That's the equivalent that you have to teach case, conduct, principle, author, authority, right? That's the halacha and all its perushoy and the tam, right? And Shulchan Aruch. Notice that you can't just put on stuff on the table and it's all ready to eat, but it's all disorganized. No, it's kind of like a Shulchan Aruch where everything is set. You ever walk into a catered hall, where it's about to go to a wedding? Everything is set. The bread, the wine, the coleslaw, it's all set in its right place. Right? So that's what he's telling Moshe. You want to teach them, you need to teach them with analysis and synthesis. Now this is the way the Rosh Hashanah taught Moshe. Obviously. And he's saying, Moshe, you need to do the same thing I did to you. Don't give them a shortcut or some kind of a kitzah where you teach them just the law, right? And there's no analysis, which means there's no principles, there's no authority, there's none of this ideas, right? And there's certainly no synthesis. No. You need to teach them the way I taught you. Now, if that's the case, whatever happened? Mishnais is not this.
Exactly.
Mishnais is disorganized.
Right.
Gemara, forget about Gemara, is certainly disorganized. It's basically all fragmented and it's unsequenced. Right? It's sequenced in a manner that we don't really understand. But it is the problem with a lot of this stuff is that it's deficient because a great deal of the information is missing. Right? So it's deficient, one, in terms of what should be written down, the comprehension and so on. I'm not going to why, but this is the fact. The Mishnah is deficient in information, and so on. And it doesn't have the background information and so on. It's just missing all this. The second thing, not only is it deficient, right, it is disorganized. Because many times you'll find fundamental ideas in the 8th parak and ideas which are more advanced in the 1st parak. That's disorganized, right? And not only that, it's also fragmented. It's not only disorganized, you know what I'm saying?
It's pulled from all over.
Yeah, because even if you find the advanced part first, it's not all the advanced part. You'll find the advanced part here, and later on, all over the place.
And another Masechta too.
And another Masechta, it's all, So, like, what is this? So, the question is, why did Rebbe do that? That's a very difficult question to answer. Maybe part of the thing is what you suggested, is that Rebbe had a head to write it down. But that doesn't mean you can make it easy. You still have to schwitz, and so on. So the way he got you to schwitz was to write it deficient, disordered, and disorganized. You know what I'm saying?
Was it for tikkun and the cheda ego?
Whatever. I mean, it's clearly it's a klipa.
That's what's the subject.
It says in Masechta Sanhedrin. It says there's a pasuk in Eicha. B'machashchem hoshivani, you have placed me in darkness. It's in Eicha. So you know what the Gemara says? The Gemara says, what does it mean you have placed me in darkness? Zu Talmud Bavli. This is Talmud Bavli. Not bad.
Where's that quote from?
It's Sanhedrin. I think it's Sanhedrin. What was it? Membeis? Whatever. Zu Talmud Bavli. Okay, Rashi has his own pshat there, but Talmud Bavli is choshech. It's darkness. Anything that has Ashim Mokmechon and all over the place is darkness. Because why would it be in one place and then 14 Masechtas later? I mean, what is that supposed to mean?
So why was it such a
you don't find that in any literature. You know what I'm saying? and so on. The whole thing is disorganized.
So if it's not ideal, then why were people so upset when the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch, and the Rif started organizing everything?
These are very dangerous questions you're asking me. And since it's being recorded, it's unsafe.
But it was the whole show on this subject. It was the whole show, big one, not even one, I think more than one even.
Yeah.
But I've got this question.
Listen, I told you a long time. The reason why most guys, what's the story? You go to a 30-year-old yeshiva guy. Does he remember what he learned? Hardly. Otherwise, he remember the Masech that he learned a year ago. Does he remember something he learned 30 years ago? Hardly. Why? Why is it the fundamental question I want to say? Why is it you can produce an engineer in 5 years, a doctor in 7, a lawyer in 3, and it takes 30 years to become a Talmid Chacham? It's still information. It's halachic information. Why should it do that? And the answer is because they don't learn the database first. They jump right into an advanced text called the Gemara. I've said this many times, So their whole the pedagogical system is incredibly deficient, and it's dysfunctional, basically. And that's why so many guys coming out of yeshiva hardly know anything. Even if they know, they don't remember anything.
But it's for cheder ego. No, really, it's
okay.
The reasons are deep.
These are why this is true. So if it was done, like I say, but this is the way Baruch said, Moshe. Which is the opposite of what we're learning. Tomorrow, Torah is not taught this way. Torah is taught disordered, disintegrated, disordered, unsequenced. It's like and that's why nobody remembers anything. Anyway.
No, we're about
but
to
this is
change
the way to do it.
We're about to change it now anyway.
What?
We're about to change it right now anyway.
Okay, what's the top of on the top is Torah, correct? Underneath Torah, yes, you have man and his world.
Environment?
In other words, you have Torah, which are the laws of the Torah concern man and his world. Yes? That's the top.
Does world mean environment?
Yes. Well, and those things outside of him. Under man, you have his development, to achieve shleimus. And under his world, you'd have two things: objects and entities. That's the second level. Third level, under development, you'd have the three spheres, which is cognition, knowing, thinking, and so on. Affect, A-F-F-E-C-T, which is emotions or feelings, and then actions, doing. That's under development, to develop yourself in all three areas.
Cognitive, affects?
Yeah, cognitive, affective, and doing action domains. Those are the three domains of development of a person. And under object, you'd have ownership. Interactions with the objects. There was ownership of the object, interactions with an object, and usage of an object.
No, ownership.
And under ownership of an object, you'd have ownership and the interference with ownership.
It's one thing really.
Yeah, it's ownership and its interference or negation. Mm-hmm. Then you'd have interaction with ownership, with objects. Then you'd have usage with objects. So your object ownership or object interference, or ownership interference. You'd have object interaction and object usage. Under entity, you'd have two entities. It would be a meta domain, metaphysical domain, namely Kedusha, the Rebbeinu Shalom, and Tumah. Two entities, Shechina and Tumah. That would be what, level 3?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Level 4.
Shina Tuma.
Who?
No, Shina Tuma. I just.
Yeah. So level 4 would be the Taryag, clustered around
Oh, but
those topics.
Entity Shina Tuma, it's not all. I mean, we have regular entities also. I mean, we have Shina Tuma, but what about regular entities?
Yeah, let me show you.
You mean other people?
Yeah, I mean,
activate-
our world entities. I mean,
Okay.
it should be there somehow.
Put down, people.
Oh, this world, that.
Yeah, you have objects and entities. Entities would be, well, okay. put
I
down
mean,
people.
material entities. Entities of material.
No, that's objects. That is objects.
What would you call people who are not the man?
Exactly. So you're talking about, other individuals, people,
Entities.
other entities.
Yeah,
We put
Shekhinah
people-
to people.
The laws how you deal with people.
Just people, yeah. I guess.
What is that? What kind of laws are these?
After
The Hezek.
B'adam Mechaveroi.
yeah. So under entities you'd have with other Jews.
It's quite interesting because
Right,
B'adam
as well.
Mechaveroi, interference of ownership is B'adam Mechaveroi.
The what?
Interference of ownership is B'adam Mechaveroi.
No, but there's also chesed that's not connected with ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Do them a favor, lend them money. It's what you do with your objects vis-a-vis another person. So as part of the entities, put down another person. Others,
I mean,
other people.
Certain things they belong to different.
Etc.
Who?
Etc.
No, etc.
Yeah.
doesn't say anything. There's nobody named etc. Okay, how's it look so far? I'm not even looking.
Probably has three.
Okay, now the 4th level is in the introduction of Taryag, clustered around those 3rd level categories. The entire Taryag mitzvahs will address these categories.
So just areas. The first level
Just,
is just areas.
it's the cluster
Not really
groups of
4th level.
Taryag.
It's not really 4th level. It's more like a title. It's more like a title for the 3rd level. I wouldn't really call it a 4th level.
Well, now I want to go into the actual mitzvahs itself concerning these
So that would be a
topics.
subset because you're not really going down a level from those. It's really a sort of a magnification on each of those topics.
Yes, yeah,
So-
but it's the 4th level
but it's-
underneath these 3.
Granted, but it's
Okay.
in.
But it's Taryag, right? Even if
I'm
it's
envisioning a different system, but okay.
yeah, no, but what in other words, these are the major categories, and then the Taryag will
understand
be
what you-
clustered
okay, I
under
understand
these
what you wanted to
categories
do.
because they are the actual requirements
I understand
of
what
each
you
of these
wanted to
things.
do.
Then under that,
And the reg.
under Taryag, you'd have Seder, and then Masechet, and then Perek. There you are.
Does it start with a pasuk?
Oh, that's Taryag.
Taryag.
Under Taryag, you'd have
The pasuk,
you'd have a whole.
including in Taryag. Is the pasuk
Yes,
took
you'd have a
involved.
whole. In other words, you'd have all the mitzvahs, and under each mitzvah, you'd have standardized
So in
categories.
Parak, would you have halacha?
مش perek.
No, just what does it deal with?
The Parak, each Parak has.
Well,
a
each
count of halacha.
each masechta you'd have what it deals with. First,
I mean, now that you're at the level of Masechta, so now you have a whole new tree.
Perek,
correct.
Masechet.
Well, but it's going to go under the Taryag.
No, Seder, correct, Masechta.
Where are the Taryag mitzvahs in the Mishnayos?
You want to do basically with this, what you were doing with the other
Yeah.
project that we talked about.
Yeah. So you'd have Moed, you'd have Seder, Masechet, and Perek. I don't know if I would pick Perek, but certainly Masechet,
That's under
and the
Taryag.
divisions of each Masechta. There you are. So this is a total view of the entire Torah.
So after Taryag, what do we have?
Well, then
below Taryag?
where are the Taryag located? In Mishnayos. So you'd have the Seder
Right.
and then the Masechta.
And
That's
Perek, we wouldn't do Perek.
Who?
We wouldn't.
Okay, yeah, I'm not into Perek. Exactly. That's it. That's it, and that's really the totality of all Torah. It really deals with that, and you see how all the different areas of Torah. That's really what you see. Then you could begin to specialize. To go into different. Okay, let's talk about now ownership. You know, so which Masechtas deal with ownership, which Seder, Masechta, and what are the details of ownership? What are the details of Kedusha, or Tumah, or Chesed?
So why are we not dividing it once we get to Taryag? Meaning, why are we going down 2 levels before we start dividing? When we first started the series, we were talking about Taryag, or being structuring Al-Pi Taryag, as opposed to structuring Al-Pi Masechet.
Yeah.
So, in this case, level 4 should already start branching out. There's the Taryag that had to do with cognitive responsibility. Taryag, that not Masechet, Taryag.
No, yeah. The Taryag would be clustered according to level 3. Level 3 is the groupings of the Taryag. What determines the groupings of the Taryag?
Understood.
Right?
But your goal is to get a structure of each of the Taryag mitzvahs.
It's not well, that's a mini structure.
Understood.
My goal is to look at all Taryag and to ask myself, where in this plan does it fit?
This one plan does it fit.
Correct.
And then Agav, you also have to name the Seder and the Masechta and the Parak.
Yeah, that goes there. That's where is the Taryag mitzvah found.
So this chart could really end by Taryag.
It could end, yeah.
Because what you do with Seder Masechet, you're already getting into the
where is it
structure
found?
of Mishnayos.
Well, yeah, but that's where it's found. The key in Yedias HaTorah is really Taryag and Mishnayos. Gemara is problem solving,
right.
Which you can take the maskonos of all the Masechtas and put it right into the,
Yeah, but the interesting part is that Taryag, when you're gonna start putting which
you took a picture of this?
Yeah.
Good.
Send it to me.
When you're gonna
do me, and then you want to do something with that? Great.
When you get Taryag and you want to put each mitzvah into its right masechta, each mitzvah is gonna come out in different masechtas.
It may.
It may.
Yeah, like we have in the Dharm when we split it up.
Right, split it up. So then when you're gonna get when you're learning Mishnayos, there's 2 ways of learning Mishnayos. Either you could learn the masechta, or you could learn it as a sugya. Meaning I'm gonna learn a mitzvah, and this mitzvah is gonna be found in a series of masechtas, different masechtas.
Yeah, that's fine, but that's fine. That's the concept of a GPS.
Correct.
It tells you where you are. Yeah. So I can learn one masechta, and it happens to be, or the halachas, let's say, like we said, I know Nedarim creates isurim on object usage, so therefore it really should belong in somewhere in Zroim on the clock where we're Klayim and all and so on.
Okay.
So that's fine. But when I do learn it, I'll learn it in the Dharm. I mean, that's where it's located. That's what, But I know conceptually it really belongs in someplace else. Now, if you want to rearrange the Mishnayos, that's what you would do. But that's a different story. In other words, if you want to keep the format of Mishnayos, then you'd have to, note and so on. This really belongs here and so on. But what is possible is to completely rearrange Mishnayos as an incredible text, arranged this way, right? And then it's a whole different Masechta, conceptually organized, based on their relationships, truly. And then it's a whole different textbook.
That becomes a Shulchan Aruch.
No, yeah, in a certain sense, but not really, because it's not Halacha L'Maisa, and it has no minhagim. It's strictly the ideas of Shas Mishnayos. There is no, it's not Halacha L'Maisa, so it could be.
What value are we putting, why are we focusing on a Masechta, if anyways, it could even be out, one of the pratim of the mitzvah could be outside the whole Seder, for all we know.
It could be in another Seder. It
could be a completely different Seder.
Yeah, exactly.
So then in this structure...
Why is this important?
Why is this important?
Why this?
Because it's not completely accurate. Meaning, obviously, let's say Hilchos Shabbos will be mostly in Shabbos Erevin.
Yeah, generally speaking, it covers that area, yeah. Sometimes you'll have a deviation, but generally speaking, yeah, sure.
Okay.
And not only that, it's not safe to rearrange Mishnayos.
I understand, but I'm saying this...
It's not safe because people say, wait a minute.
This is page 1.
Give me a new, what is this? A new,
Ridiculous.
A New Testament.
Yeah, what is it? A New Testament. I don't know if I call it New Testament, but, it's a rearrangement.
They call it Common Core.
Who? Common
Core.
What's that?
It's a way of teaching math now that the government decided is better.
It is?
And it has the students and the teachers going crazy.
Because they revamped the entire sequence or structure.
It's a very backwards way of doing things. Not necessarily backwards, very confusing way of doing things, and the teachers themselves are very unhappy.
Well,
I myself don't know details, but I know that people are very unhappy with it.
Who originated that?
It's an Obama thing.
Who do you think?
It's a control thing.
Who? Obama?
I imagine it's, I mean, it didn't. It started under his term.
Obama?
I don't know if he himself was the instigator, but I know it started under his term.
Yeah, but this would be fakert. You know, to revamp the Mishnayos.
I'm saying that's how people would see it.
Well, because people are very
set in their
loyal
ways.
to. Exactly, so therefore I think the ideal situation, but conceptually Mishnayos is more difficult. It's and so on. If you want to master it, this is a way you can master it easier, and so on. The key is to get away from fragmentation, from disorganization, and so on, and deficiency of information. That's the key. And but it could be interesting. Actually, what would be better is that you learn both arrangements simultaneous. Means you start out with the revamping edition first, because that is a true conceptual structure. And then you ask yourself, okay, this halacha here, where is it found in the Mishnah? And then you learn the Mishnayos. The halachas are there, In a certain sense, it's like learning sugyas. When a person learns sugyas, what does he do? He learns the sugyas wherever it's found, right? And then, he'll go back to, and so on, right? The same thing. Why? Because you want to organize, you want to learn it in an organized way, in a sufficient way. That's really what it is. There are people who only learn sugyas. It means that even if it's found in Sanhedrin and one is found in Shabbos, they won't follow the order of the Masechta. Why? Because they realize it is insufficient information. If you want to gain a totality understanding of an entire topic, you need to follow where the topic is, not where the Gemara says it is. That's why that's a whole shita. People learn sugyas, isn't it? So how come they were not castigated? How dare you leave the Gemara and go somewhere else? You see? Really, because they never rewrote the Gemara. But if they had rewritten it and just wrote a Gemara through sugyas, means all the sugyas, and any Masechta will be only in that Masechta.
Is that what the Rif did?
No, the Rif curtailed it. He just, he didn't do that. That's because they never did that. They never revamped the text. They just have to run wherever the sugya is. But imagine learning a Gemara that has all the sugyas in the Gemara, to revamp the sequence of the Gemara itself. Interesting.
So really there's two ways. Once we get to level 3, we could either go to level 4, which is Taryag.
Yeah.
The other way of doing it is to right here put the main Sidarim and Masechtas.
But the problem is the Taryag clustered is the real sequence. That's really what it is. The basis of Mishnayos is the Taryag.
Right.
It's not vice versa. So the Taryag clustered based on the original categories, which is the first 3 levels, is really the way to go. It's not the reverse.
Yeah.
That there was an order to their learning, a proper order, of developing an idea. And it wasn't done haphazardly and, wherever you want. We don't have any text at that time, but... So, how many levels we got here?
We're up to 5 levels.
5 levels, okay, that's it.
Let me ask you something. This is
Anyway.
ties into this. It's a little bit hashkafa flavored, but is there such a thing where the Hakadosh Baruch Hu, when he first gave the Torah, it was done the most bekitzer possible? I mean, when he first gave the Dibros, seem to remember Chazal, he said them all at once. And just the first
Well, that's when he delivered it.
The first revelation was all at once, and then it sort of fragmented from there, or not fragmented, but it sort of spread out from there. The Seres HaDibros to the Torah, to the Halachos, to everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting that Rav Saadia Gaon, I think he wrote a whole thing where all the mitzvahs come out of the Seres HaDibros. So that's interesting, you know. But he did the same thing where he based on all the mitzvahs coming from the Seres HaDibros, which is interesting, you know. I think he wrote a whole book on that. It's a whole poem on that, you know. So, you know. But it's the same idea where you begin from the beginning. You begin from step, you know, the simple, and then you begin to, you know, fragment it. You begin to, not fragment it, but you begin to divide more general. I mean, this is the way all Chachma is. You begin from what's called basic principles, and then you build from there, the details of details, and so on.
Now, the Shulchan Aruch himself did not divide the way the Rambam divides.
No, the Shulchan Aruch, first of all, is not all the mitzvahs.
Okay.
I mean, most of the mitzvahs are missing.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it, you know. There's no kachim, there's no taras, and so on, you know.
It's very little Zerayim, too.
Yeah. It's mostly Nashim and Ezekiel and Moed. That's it, 3 Siddur. And then half the Shulchan Aruch is Minhagim. You know, was the Rambam focused basically on Min HaTorah and D'Rabbanan, biblical and rabbinical laws. You know.
Minhagim.
Yeah, and then
is that many Minhagim written in the Shulchan Aruch?
Sure, Chei Noagu. Sure. So there's so many Minhagim. You know, different between Ashkenaz Minhag and Sfard Minhag. Ramon and Mechaber, right there and then. A lot of it is Psak and also Minhagim. What was common to their countries and so on. Anyway, so this would be ideal. It's not that difficult to make. You know, you really just have to study the Taryag well, cluster them, arrange them and organize them, detail them to a certain extent, and just group them into this idea, and you see the whole Torah.
Is it possible that we could...
Without even opening Mishnahs. What?
Is it possible we could have some sort of guide? Let's say start with this, go through, and it goes through each, as you get down to Masechta, it starts going through each Masechta and starts talking about subject. It just lays out the chart of subject. It's sort of like a basic guide to how to approach Torah and Mishnayos.
Yeah, sure you can. Yeah, you can do that, sure. Look, Aitaina, which is incredible, people jump into a Masechta, at least learn the Mishnayos of the Masechta, right? They don't even do that. Which is suicide. You pick. People don't know what's going on here. You know, you start your Yevamos, which is a whole. It's a deviation of a deviation and so on. Well, how do you do that? First, learn the entire Mishnayos of Yevamos, organize it, and then to begin to do the sugyas.
That's Gemara. I mean, children in 5th grade start learning a new Metzias.
Yeah.
But they never touched a Masechta and Nezikim before. They only did Maya, the Mishnayos.
Yeah, they don't know what
they have no concept of Nezikin, and they're like thrown straight into the Metzias.
No, but they do. But they don't understand the situation. You know, the situation is there. You found something.
They understand the situation.
What does belong to? They understand the situation.
They don't
just going to Prat without going to Cloud first. But they understand the situation well.
It's a foreign situation.
It's not necessarily bad for a small kid. You can get abstract ideas here.
That's just like, you know.
So what do we do next time? We're going through Taryag? What do we
do next time?
We're going through Taryag? We start Taryag?
We take a trip somewhere.
So what do we bring? What sefer do we bring? We're going to class Taryag.
This week is like Boima, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to decide what to do for Ramchal's Yotzai, which is not this week, it's the following week, Thursday night.
Right.
So I have to, but anyway, worst comes to worst, I'm going to give a share Thursday night, ask the guys who come Saturday night to Thursday night, and we'll put out some stuff, you know, whatever, some food, you know, and I'll give it a share. But this time I'll give it for his memory. That's all. I don't want to make it too complicated, but I could put out a couple of dishes.
Don't they usually have? Don't you usually do something with your brother, or?
Yeah, but I don't know what he wants to do. The problem with what he does is he starts at 9:30 because guys come at 9:30 because they finish Seder at 9:30 or 10, right? And then he goes on for an hour and a half.
I think we should.
So by the time he's finished 11:30, everybody's wiped, and I only go up and give another hour shit.
I think we should do it hours before marriage.
Before marriage, because people want to go to fires anyway. If they're still
no, I'm talking about Ram Chaziyot.
I'm sorry.
I'm talking about.
I think we should do it before. Our share should be before.
Well, I could, but I don't. So I either. I can do it.
What's that to do with your side? There's nothing doing at your side.
Who?
Yeah, what are you going to do on your side?
Oh, you're not for the best 30
He wants to switch Saturday night to Thursday night.
For the past 30 years.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking of doing, minimally, I haven't decided, I'll announce it next Shabbos, night,
They don't want
is to move the Saturday night share.
You want to move it?
Yeah.
Why? Let's have another show. We'll have another show then.
Why
to move?
I personally think. What do you think? Do you think the people will
Because
come to
Saturday night? I'm afraid they'll only want to come to one share a week, and if I don't
it's
move
around Chaziyot site.
No,
I think it's like you're making a style thing.
I'm not worried.
It's around Chaziyot site. I think people. I personally, and I'm not a Navi, but I personally don't think it will diminish from the Saturday night share.
Yeah, what I want is at least a minyan, so we can say Kaddish, and we'll put out some food. Not a big deal, 10, 15 people, we average around, It's not a big deal. Have 2 or 3 dishes and that's it, And have a, suda.
Glatt type of stuff?
Who?
Glatt type of stuff, like takeout?
Yeah.
Well, where's your brother going to speak this year? Is he going to speak in Brooklyn or Lakewood, or where's he going to speak?
I don't know. He's been speaking several years. I spoke last year, but the year before that he spoke in Lakewood because some guys arranged it for me.
You have a paper.
Right, last year you spoke, yeah.
I spoke. It was a nice crowd, 70 people.
That's big, yeah.
Yeah, it was a nice crowd. So that's what I'm thinking of doing, not to make it complicated and just to...
just make that different hour.
Wasn't you were going to start earlier or something like that?
I could start it,
So for the guys who didn't want to go to your brother, sure they can
I might be able to get the food.
To hop it.
When you say get the food...
I might be able to arrange the food.
Arrange?
The food.